A $58 per wRVU rate can mean you're fairly compensated, or you're leaving $120,000 a year on the table. The difference depends entirely on which of the three contract types you're signing. Today, we're breaking down the three primary employment structures in emergency medicine: contract management groups, democratic independent groups, and hospital direct employment. By the end, you'll know exactly what questions to ask and what numbers to demand before you sign anything. Let's start with the landscape. In emergency medicine, your employer falls into one of three categories. First, contract management groups, the CMGs. These companies contract with hospitals to staff their emergency departments, then subcontract physicians. You work in the hospital, but you're employed by the CMG, not the facility. Second, democratic or independent groups. These are physician owned practices where doctors share governance and practice revenue directly. You're a partner or on partnership track, not an employee of a corporate entity. Third, hospital direct employment. The hospital itself employs you. No middleman, no CMG, no group practice. You're on the hospital's payroll. Each model has a fundamentally different economic structure, and that structure determines how much of the revenue you generate actually ends up in your paycheck. Here's where the numbers matter. The national median for emergency medicine is approximately $58 per wRVU, but that median hides massive variation by contract type. CMG compensation typically runs $50 to $65 per wRVU. Below 52, you're in the bottom quartile. That's a red flag. Hospital employed positions range from $55 to $70 per wRVU. Below 55 signals a problem. Independent democratic groups pay $60 to $80 per wRVU. If you're below 60 in a democratic group, something's wrong with the practice economics. At median production of 6,000 wRVUs per year, a $10 per wRVU gap equals $60,000 annually. A $20 gap. The difference between bottom quartile CMG and median democratic group, that's $120,000 per year. Same work, same patients, same clinical hours, six-figure difference in compensation. Here's why the gap exists. It comes down to what percentage of net professional collections reaches your paycheck. At large CMGs, physicians receive 48 to 58% of net collections. The CMG keeps the rest for corporate overhead, profit, and executive compensation. Hospital-employed physicians typically see 55 to 68% of collections. Independent democratic groups return 70 to 85% to the physicians. Emergency medicine group overhead for billing and administration runs only 12 to 18%. There's no clinic infrastructure to maintain. This is why the same rate means completely different things depending on the model. At a CMG, $58 might be near their ceiling. At an independent group, 58 would be below the bottom quartile. A sign the practice has problems or you're being offered a bad deal. Sign-on bonuses also vary dramatically by model. CMG community emergency medicine positions typically offer $25,000 to $75,000 upfront. Hospital-employed positions range from $50,000 to $150,000. Rural and high-need positions, often hospital-employed, can reach $100,000 to $250,000. Academic positions, regardless of structure, usually offer little to nothing upfront. A large sign-on bonus from a CMG isn't generosity. It's often compensation for a below-market rate. Run the numbers over the full contract term before you get excited about upfront cash. Let's examine each model in detail. Contract management groups offer predictability. You know your schedule, your rate, your benefits. They handle billing, credentialing, malpractice coverage. For physicians who want to practice medicine without business headaches, there's appeal. The trade-off is economic. When CMGs pay 48 to 58% of collections to physicians, that gap funds corporate infrastructure, regional managers, national leadership, and shareholder returns. That's money you generated that never reaches you. Questions to ask a CMG: what's my exact rate per wRVU? What's the productivity bonus structure? What happens if the CMG loses the hospital contract? Okay, do I have any placement guarantee? Is there a non compete, and what's the radius? Democratic groups offer the highest compensation ceiling in emergency medicine. At $60 to $80 per wRVU and 70 to 85% of collections going to physicians, the economics favor the doctors who generated the revenue. The trade-offs: revenue variability, governance responsibilities, and buy-in requirements. You're a business owner, not just a clinician. When payer mix shifts or volume drops, your income drops with it. Questions to ask a Democratic group: what's the partnership track and timeline? What's the buy-in amount? How are call responsibilities distributed? What's the payer mix? Specifically, what percentage is Medicaid and self-pay? What's the governance structure for major decisions? Hospital employment sits in the middle, more stable than CMG employment since you're on the hospital's payroll directly. But compensation ceiling typically falls below Democratic groups. Hospitals pay $55 to $70 per wRVU, with 55 to 68% of collections reaching physicians. You get hospital benefits, retirement matching, and often more generous malpractice coverage. Questions to ask hospitals: is this an employed position or contracted through a management company? What's the exact compensation formula? Hourly, wRVU based, or hybrid? What's the call obligation? How does productivity bonus calculation work? Here's what ties everything together. When you're evaluating any emergency medicine contract, the fundamental question is, what percentage of the revenue I generate will I actually receive? At median production, 6,000 wRVUs annually, you're generating substantial professional fee revenue. The question is how much the entity between you and that revenue keeps for itself. Don't just compare dollar amounts, compare structures. A high salary from a CMG might be worse than a lower guarantee with partnership track at a Democratic group. Because 2 years in, the Democratic group physician is earning far more, while the CMG physician is still at the same number. Red flags across all models. Rate per wRVU below the bottom quartile thresholds I mentioned. Vague productivity bonus formulas. Non-competes with excessive geographic radius. No clear explanation of how your compensation relates to collections. The physicians who negotiate effectively are the ones who understand these structures before they sit at the table. If you want a systematic way to evaluate your next contract or your current one, download our free emergency medicine contract Intel red flag checklist. It covers the specific numbers, questions, and warning signs across all 3 contract models, so you know exactly what to look for before you sign. Link in the description.